Welcome to Legal Video Resource. I'm Jason Wietholter. In this video, we're looking at tripods for deposition video. So now let's talk about tripods for deposition video. Your camera is obviously the most important piece of your deposition video kit, and arguably what your camera stands on is the next most important piece of your kit. So what are the important elements of a tripod? Well, first, because you're shooting video, you need a fluid head tripod. And what do I mean by that? Well, fluid head is just the design of the head on the tripod, what your camera actually sits on, that allows you to manipulate and move the camera, to pan it back and forth and to tilt it up and down. You know, tripods are broken into two pieces, the head itself and then the legs. So the head needs to be fluid in nature, which means it's designed for video, which means you can use it while recording and make a really smooth pan or a really smooth tilt. This is in contrast to photography heads on tripods, because photography heads are designed with all these knobs that allow you to get the camera positioned just perfectly. So if you want to tilt it one way a little bit, maybe pan it one way another, give it this weird little 45-degree angle, you can do that really easily with a photo head, but it's designed to set the camera, lock it in place, take a photo. Then move it, set the camera, lock it in place, take a photo. Fluid heads, on the other hand, are designed to give some tension to that movement. So when you stick a camera on a fluid head tripod, even if you loosen everything up, it's going to move, but it's going to move slowly. So if it's unbalanced, it'll tilt, and it'll tilt, and it'll tilt, but it'll tilt pretty slowly. As opposed to a photo head, when there's no tension, when those brakes aren't engaged, it just wants to fall over right away. So fluid head, the reason that they're fluid head are because the pan and tilt controls are keeping the video camera in position, but they're also helping to make that motion smooth. So if you want to pan left or right or tilt up and down while you're recording, that looks really nice and smooth, as opposed to just, falling over as soon as you loosen something up. And the way these pan and tilt controls work are two steps: brake and tension. And brake, you can think about like the parking brake on your car. You set the parking brake and everything just stays in place. That's kind of the idea behind a brake on a nice fluid head, tripod head. You set the brake and everything just locks in place. And that means it's not going to move. So if you lock a tripod in place, it's really hard to move that up and down because it's locked in place. It's also really hard to pan it back and forth because that pan mechanism is locked in place. Now, tension, and there are tension controls on these fluid head tripods that allow you to set the amount of tension or how much force it's going to take for you to make that pan, like how much it's going to take for you to push that camera or push that tripod head around, or how much it's going to take for you to pull that up so that the camera tilts down. Tension sets the amount of force that you need. And so it's kind of like applying the brake in your car. You apply the brake a little bit and the car slows down a little bit, or maybe you get, it turns a little bit more slowly, or you let go of the brake and it turns more quickly. You can make the turn more quickly because you're not braked along the way. That's kind of what tension does. Tension just kind of tightens up the motion, the movement a little bit. So that way it's still fluid. It's not a hard brake that keeps it in place, but it also kind of balances out maybe how heavy the camera is, or how strong you are, or how much you want to move that camera and how quickly you want to move it. So brake and tension work together. Brake locks things in place. Tension just makes it a little bit harder or easier to pan the camera back and forth or tilt it up and down. Now, we talked about head, the pan and tilt controls. On the head itself also, you want to make sure that there's some universal mounting mechanism. And what I mean by that is something that's, understood in the industry to be a mechanism that works for your camera. Typically your camera on the bottom is going to have like a 1/4/20 screw mount. And so a lot of times you can screw that directly to the tripod plate, or directly to the tripod head itself. Or you can get a quick release plate. And if you get the option, quick release plate's really the way to go, because you basically put this flat little piece of metal on the bottom of your camera, and then you can just slide it in, lock it in place, and you're ready to shoot. You slide it into the tripod head, you lock it in place, and you're ready to shoot. But make sure you pick something that's well built, that's something that's going to kind of work in the industry. There are certain plates that are more universal than others. And maybe you want to pick something that can be used on multiple tripods you have. So just make sure you pick something that works together. The next thing is you want to make sure that the tripod is easy to level. You're going to have a few minutes at the beginning of every deposition to kind of level everything out. And so there are really two ways to level a tripod. One is leveling with the legs themselves. So you can make one leg shorter and the whole tripod will kind of tilt this way. You can make another leg shorter and it'll tilt back. You can shorten the legs and level the tripod that way. The other way you can level a tripod is with what's known as a ball head. And what this is you set the legs however you want. And they can be uneven, they can be wherever, but then you have this ball that has its own tension and brake control. And you loosen it up, and then the whole tripod head moves around on this ball. You put it so it's level, and then you tighten the thing back up and it stays in place. So it doesn't matter what the legs are doing, because now you have an individual or an idiosyncratic way to level the head itself. Now, after you've got the camera on the head and you've got a fluid head and you've got it leveled, you need to make sure that the legs that the tripod head is mounted to and the tripod head itself are rated for your camera and its accessories. And what I mean by that is, as you build your camera and your kit and you add accessories to it, it's going to reach a certain weight. And certain fluid heads are not designed to work above a certain weight. So if you have a really inexpensive fluid head, it might only be designed to work with a camera that's 12 or 15 pounds or maybe less. And while that's kind of a hard number to hit when you're talking about a relatively new video camera, when you start adding accessories, maybe you mount your mixer up there, or maybe you mount your backup recorder, or maybe you have like a streaming device and you get all this other stuff mounted to the camera, that weight can add up pretty quickly. And so you need to make sure that whatever your camera and accessories are, they're going to be mounted at the top of this tripod, whatever they weigh, make sure that the legs and the head that those are sitting on are rated for that much weight. Otherwise, those pan and tilt controls and that nice fluid head that we talked about earlier isn't going to matter a whole lot, because everything's going to be overweight for it and it's not going to be able to control it anyway. Now, when it comes to the legs, you probably want the legs themselves to extend at least a good 4 feet. Maybe a little bit shorter than that, but you probably want them to be able to stand so that the legs themselves are a good 4 to 5 feet off the ground. And this varies from person to person. If you're taller like I am, maybe you want a tripod that's more like 6 feet tall. So that way, if I'm standing up, it's easier for me to use. But when you're talking about using it at a deposition, because everybody is seated at a table, you probably want that tripod to, at least the legs itself, to be about 4 feet, 5 feet high. Because that way you can get the camera up to a level where it's just kind of above the eye level of the witness. You kind of want framing a little bit like this. You don't want framing that's way down low, like you're looking at a webcam, because it looks weird. It doesn't look like a professional video, it looks like webcam video. But if you have something like this where the camera is mounted, probably the lens is probably 4-ish feet off the ground and it's kind of just above my eye line, but it's kind of pointed down at me, you get this really nice looking video. So you want to be able to make sure that the legs that you use are high enough for what it is that you need to capture. And in most cases of deposition video, that's about 4 or 5 feet. The head is going to add a few inches onto that, and then the camera itself is going to add a few inches onto that. So keep that in mind. But, with the tripod and with the legs, you can't ever add more height, but you can almost certainly always make it shorter and smaller. The other thing you kind of want to have with a deposition video tripod, though it's not a necessity, is a central telescoping stock. So, the middle piece in the tripod that then lets the tripod raise up and down by probably 12 to 18 inches. That telescoping stock, it's nice to have. When you're talking about deposition video, you're not talking about a lot of fast pace, a lot of motion. And so extending that stock typically makes the whole camera and tripod system less stable. So the more you move the camera, with this one bar in between, this one stock in between, it makes the whole system a lot less stable, introducing some shake and noise to your footage. But deposition video, you're not moving that much. And so if you need those few extra inches, it's a lot easier to move that stock than it is to move all the legs up. Because basically, if you just move the stock, you just kind of, loosen it up, push the stock up, tighten it back up, and you're done. Whereas, you only have to manipulate one thing. But a tripod, the nature of it is there are 3 legs to it. So the way that you'd have to raise a whole tripod is to loosen 3 legs and raise the whole thing at the same time and then tighten it all back down. So central telescoping stock, it's an interesting feature to have for deposition video. It's an interesting feature to have for like evidentiary video and other types of legal video as well. But like I said, when you extend that stock, it makes the whole thing less stable. And so this might not be the best situation or best solution when you're, out doing evidentiary video and doing a lot of panning, a lot of tilting, because now you've got the camera extended on the stock and the whole thing is less stable and it's moving around a lot. So be careful of that, but it's a nice feature to have just for the flexibility of being able to kind of add a few inches after you've already set everything up. The last thing you want to look for in your video tripod, in your deposition video tripod, is something that's lightweight and easy to carry. I mean, you're going to be carrying this along with your kit all over the place into lots of different locations. You want to make sure it's something that you can, throw in a bag and throw over your shoulder, because it's probably not something that's going to fit very easily into a case. So you're going to want something that you can throw over your shoulder and take in with you pretty much anywhere you go. So make sure it's something lightweight and easy to carry. So those are some things to look for in a tripod for deposition video. Thanks so much for joining me today as we looked at tripods for deposition video. If you found this video helpful or interesting, I encourage you, click subscribe down below, because as we post new content to this channel, you'll be the first to know about it. Also, if you have a comment or a question, something else you want to learn about tripods, let us know in the comments down below. We'll try to answer those questions there or answer them in a future video. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on Legal Video Resource.